Chapter 116 Evaluation Conference Smoggy. Contrary to popular belief, we aren't dead. We're just a little busy these days. And I've recently started college hunting. The pressure's on? Question mark. Work hard, work even harder because everyone else is on holiday. Yuka 2015. Putting that aside, please check your email, Yuka-san. Smoggy. TLC. Done. Thanks, Guru. Yuka and Smoggy. Clown 2016. Chapter 116 Evaluation Conference. The past few days were busy once, mainly due to the labyrinth. After my debut as a demon lord, the fighting tournament was held and it proceeded smoothly. Both can be considered as major successes. In particular, the method of using the improved long distance communication orb, the crystal ball with the ability to record and project images on a large screen, was very popular. We were able to watch the fights of the tournament very clearly through the enlarged images projected onto big screens. Above all, being able to observe the interior of the labyrinth from a safe distance was supposedly a shock, culturally, for foreign authorities. In the case of the Dwarf King, oi oi, even though you're openly showing off some horrible things, there is just so much potential applications for this. I'm at a loss whether this is a good thing or not. Before you disclose this to the public, I want to have a word with you. I was given a piece of advice. T and note, it's specifically more of an outspoken or candid advice rather than just purely advice. For us, its value lies in its entertainment and convenience. However, to the countries surrounding the Great Jura Forest, it's a completely different story. It's quite easy to think of a use for it in the military. Excuse me. Being able to command armies from a safe location is a major advantage. Above all, the situation of enemy troops right after a suicidal squad attack could be immediately shown. This piece of technology that we had just willingly shown is an innovative product that can be considered as super high tech. The technology was developed using my analysis along with the fusion of science and magic. Thus, it was also easy to produce it en masse. However, the distance and amount of information transferred is dependent on the user, as it consumes the user's magical power to function. This inconvenience was improved using the magical power integration system, but it's best that I not say that. Anyway, it seems that in the case of you, something which could be used in the military is also usable for entertainment. I was told that with amazement. However, it had an excellent effect on publicity. The Empress of the Magic Dynasty of Sarian quickly offered cooperation. If you'd like, would you want financial support? Perhaps we would head towards that direction in time. However, if we could get some experts in Magitech, that would be a real lifesaver. Full moon, I got it. We'll return and review this immediately. She left with Duke Elalud after saying that. Sarion's Empress had the expression of a child with a new toy, brimming with delight. Compared to the depressed Duke, the difference was impressive. I already believe that compared to the initial technology agreement, it's only a matter of time before full-fledged joint research begins between us. The Dwarf King prepared a technological research team at home, promised to send them forth to the monster country Tempest before leaving as well. So far, so good. Then, a problem occurred. First, the Tengu clan. I was visited in private after the competition, and I was greeted with the words, "I was very rude the other day, and I'm sorry. I humbly come to thee to plead for forgiveness." Everyone came to apologize. Well, that's good, because I didn't think their actions were much of a problem. I wasn't bothered all that much. However, here's the problem. Therefore, if as means of apologizing, I would like to be allowed to serve under Benimaru and become his bride. Huh? What's she saying? The granddaughter of the Tengu elder Momiji dropped such a bomb. When you think about it, she has quite the reckless, straightforward personality. I looked at Benimaru, and for an instant, he was thunderstruck by the news and fell into panic, begging with his eyes, saying, "No way, no way." But then I thought, isn't this fine? This is something between those two. If I get involved, it would only get confusing. As they always say, a wise man never courts trouble. It's my style to avoid these troublesome situations. Well, about that, asked the person in question. Outsiders shouldn't interfere, should they? There was extra emphasis on outsider, and I decided to leave the talking to Benimaru. The executives showed their approval in response to my words. Seems like none of us wanted to get involved. And so, good luck, Benimaru. I think that should suffice as the reward for winning the tournament. So flirt to your heart's content. Whilst cheering him on in my heart, the problem was postponed. The issue with the Tango tribe was left to Benimaru, and I decided to stay out of it completely. responsible. I have no idea what you're talking about. And when one problem was left aside, another comes up. And this problem is the cause of my recent headaches. And that problem is dungeon conquering did not go as well as expected. The first layer had no traps, and it was meant to help get used to the atmosphere of the dungeon. Thus I thought it would be in the level where clearing it within a day would be possible. However, 3 days had passed and there were no signs of anyone clearing it. There were even parties who were killed by C-rank monsters, or rather, there were a lot. Blinded by greed, those fools rushed towards the treasure box without even noticing the monsters hiding in the corner of the room. They don't get the basics. In a nutshell, their sense of danger is sorely lacking. In addition, the monsters wandering around were mainly small fry F ranks. There were mainly E ranks and some D ranks in the mix, but this was ultimately a failure. There were also fools who challenged it alone and were promptly slaughtered by three E rank monsters. There were also those who met D ranked ones and were quickly killed. They were so low leveled, they left me speechless. However, the problem was not so bad as to induce panic yet. These challengers this time are a bouncer and a mercenary, prideful guys who we know good at exploration. Who were no good at exploration. Even though I waited, no one had cleared it after 3 days. There were there are even those who had given up in their midst. That's a given though, since the save point is located every 10 levels. If you don't bring in large quantities of rations, you'll soon go hungry. And as they got lost and couldn't decide if they should go for the exit, they were advised to stockpile on provisions and equipment at the beginning, but they didn't heed it. If I seriously designed the dungeon to kill them, there wouldn't be a single successful conqueror even after 100 years. I guess we need to reconsider it all from bottom up, and this is what has been making my head hurt recently. At this rate, things are going to take a turn for the worse. No, the number of dungeon conquerors is not a problem. If there are magic stones, a small bit of profit could be procured, and thus there are quite the amount of people entering the dungeon one after the other. When the influential magnates returned to their respective countries, they seem to have posted requests for people to conquer the dungeon. Amongst them are some who have thoroughly prepared. However, they are in the minority, and those with sloppy preparations make up the majority. And thus, an evaluation meeting. The participants are me, Vildora, Ramirez, and as an observer, Masayuki. Alright, judging from the current situation, it's completely no good. Our enjoyment, that's not it. I believe in order for there to be some successful conquerors, we should give some a bit of guidance. At this rate, they wouldn't even reach the 10th floor. I mean, what kind of idiot even tries to take on the labyrinth alone? After all, they wouldn't even notice their lack of alertness if we don't point it all. And thus, the first level was designed for the sake of getting the feeling. Should I turn it into a athletic stage where monsters don't spawn? In this level, you get to learn about traps, have combat training with monsters. Well, we can also use it for soldier training for the recruits of the monster country. What do you think? My opinions. I believe they're too soft. To some degree, I'd want them to undergo training to get a feel on their arms. I think so too. If Milim were there, they would have all been sent blasting off in a fit of fury. Thus, the creators of the dungeon were completely blasting the challengers rather than discussing the difficulty of the dungeon. In that case, there should also be lessons on the basics of dungeon capturing, like a tutorial. After Masayuki's casual remark, we looked at each other. Tutorial? What's that? It sounds tasty. Is it edible? I thought Veldora would know about it. But but if not even Veldora knows about it, then there's no way Ramirez would. Thus, Masayuki and I described what a tutorial was. The two were convinced. That sounds great. I get it. Let's set it up at once. Ramirez nodded. But, please wait a moment. I have also noticed something else. What about installing inns and meals on each save point? Or rather, if they're all spatially connected by a door, we would only need one such area, right? This way, people who didn't prepare beforehand would use it even if it's expensive. P and note, you know what to do. What was that? Is this guy a genius? Ramirez directed her line of sight towards him, nodded strongly, and returned to us. Masayuki-kun, we'll try to adopt your idea. If there's anything else you have in mind, do not hesitate to speak up. While I encouraged him, Masayuki was in thought and recalling a game he once played. That's right. For example, maybe save points that are single use only having a save point once every 10 floors will probably be too difficult, although I think it would probably best to rid them of their dependence in less than 30 floors, at least until 20th floor. Let's leave a little bit of sweetness in their dungeon capturing experience. Fumu, T and note, as previously mentioned, Japanese equivalent of HM. I see. Omo, I thought so too. What Masayuki said is reasonable. Veldora quickly hopped aboard on with Masayuki's suggestion. Well, I don't have any objections either. All right then, I'll prepare hidden room on each floor, connecting it to the dining hall on the 95th floor. This will also increase the usefulness of that town. Then to implement a dropped item that can create a save point anywhere. Is this possible, Ramirez? Of course. There's even room to spare. The item name is Record Orb. Let's make it as a rare drop from Small Fries. Great, great. The first floor should be for gathering prior experiences in addition to announcements. Whether a person uses it or not is up to them, and it's set so that they can't die in this floor. There's a mechanism that allows them to revive on the spot, like a children's playground. Then the second floor would allow virtual battles with all sorts of monsters. It should be able to reproduce the encountering experience to a certain degree, and it should help with capturing the dungeon. However, unique monsters and boss monsters are excluded as possible targets. That would be way too convenient. Thus, on the second floor, each person would feel like they have flew into a personal space. The real thing starts on the third floor. However, there will be no traps installed on the third floor, and the demons that roam the halls are also low-leveled, only F ranks. If only I only placed A ranked ones in one section of the area, along with the treasure chest containing potions. Expensive goods will start appearing at floor 5 and below. Just like that, I also thought about making adjustments and change the level of difficulty. Even in game developing, there would be a certain degree of unreasonableness after closed testing. Actually, tentatively, the test is being carried out. However, the ones doing the capturing are 6 members of Yumigairi. Under Sean's commands, we were able to capture down to the 40th floor without any problems. Well, we didn't arrange a stay on the 30th floor. However, even with the traps and small fries, the capture proceeded without much struggle. Thanks to that, we had noticed we made a mistake in the assumption of the labyrinth's difficulty level. We must choose our testers carefully. This will be a future challenge. Thus, we had hosted an evaluation meeting and remade a new dungeon. Murmels had sent a request excuse me, and presented a reward for people to capture the dungeon to the branches of the Freedom Association in each nation. He is doing his job well. Weights were placed on Gozuru's wrist and feet while he stands guard on the 30th floor. The Mezu, now named Mezuru, also defends that floor in shifts. The 50th floor will also be guarded by either Mezuru or Gozuru, but without their restraints, I hope they could get along as fellow defenders. The 95th floor will be the town of the elves and the Triants planned, and with the cooperation of Gerudo and Mildo, the place was finished with a beautiful and fantastical touch. Even though it's underground, there's the sun and the sky, and even the stars can be seen at night, and thus the labyrinth's appearance changes every day, giving it a fresh new touch. T and note, think the Mystery Dungeon series. And finally, adventurers banding together to form capturing teams has arrived in the Monster Sea Country Tempest at last. End of chapter 116.